In this video, I'm going to cover the next two sections in options, which are payoff and profit calculations, and then actually how to visualize those in payoff and profit diagrams. Let's first start about payoff and profit calculations. Okay, so what does this relate to? This relates to if I actually purchase an option, I want to be able to calculate when am I going to make money, how much money do I make or lose on an option position. And so what we've gone through so far is we've looked at the so-called payoff function of an option. What was the payoff function? The payoff function of an option was the value to the person who holds that option of the option at the expiration date. So they hold an option, they hold it all the way to expiration, and then what is its value at expiration? All right, that's also called the exercise value. What is the value when they get to the expiration date? What is the value of exercising it or not? Okay, and we had formulas for that. So very important formulas for the call payoff. What was it? It was, put this as a colon here. It was the maximum of S sub t minus X or 0. X was the strike price. S sub t was the stock price. And for a put, it looked very similar, except these two were flipped around. X minus S sub t. X is the strike price. S sub t is the stock price. Okay, so we knew how to calculate those formulas. And that is the value of the option at expiration. You have an option, you hold it to expiration, and then you look how valuable is it to me. And of course, that depends on the stock price at expiration. All right, what is this missing? This does not take into account the price that you paid for an option. If you remember, in the last video, I used an analogy with a coupon, especially for a call option. A call option is like a coupon. Now, most coupons you get for free, but let me give you the scenario where it might not be free. Let's say you love pizza and you know that your favorite pizza place is sending out coupons, and you've got a friend who doesn't like pizza, and your friend got a coupon, but you're like, oh, I know my friend's not going to use it. And now you might go and say, hey, can I buy your coupon from you, right? So that would be like you have to purchase the option, and that's the way it is in markets.
Okay, you ready to
They don't
pop
give
up?
you options for free. You have to go buy
go
those
for it.
options, okay? So there's a price involved.
Okay, go a little bit to the
when we want
right.
to calculate our overall profit or loss on an
do
option
it again.
position, it needs to take into account the price that we paid for it. Thus, our total profit or loss of an option position is just given by the following. Our profit or loss is what? The payoff,
Sure.
this is what happens at expiration. You hold it to expiration. How valuable is it?
Oh, go ahead.
Minus whatever you paid for
Pop up.
it, the price.
Yep.
All right, let's see that formula in
Yes.
action. I'm just going to go through two different examples here. The first one
Okay, I'll stop it
you
now.
might want to walk through with me, and then the second one try on your own to make sure you have the concepts, because I will expect you to know how to do these for an exam. Consider a call option with a premium of 3. Let's note what the word premium means. Premium means price. So a price of $3, strike price of 25. It's a call option, so it's the option to buy, with 1 month to expiration. The current price of the underlying stock is $25. Okay, and I'll often indicate the current price as with a sub-0, 0 being the time, meaning I'm at time 0, that's right now, that's not at expiration. Okay, assume that at expiration the stock price is $29.50. So you hold it all the way to expiration, and then boom, you're at expiration, $29.50. What is the payoff and profit on the call option? And I'm going to throw in that multiplier of 100. Okay, I'm going to throw that in as well. Here's the way I tackle these problems. So the first thing that I do is, number one, ignore this multiplier. Ignore it for now. We'll bring it in at the end. Otherwise, it just complicates things. Think of this option as on a single share of stock, okay? And what do I know how to calculate? I'm going to calculate the payoff of this call option. So the payoff is what? Like I'm all the way at expiration, and I want to see how valuable that is. So that's my payoff way out there. We know how to calculate that. So I'm going to do that. This is a call option, and I go to my formula for a call option. That was C sub t, and that was the maximum of S sub t. This is the stock price at expiration. What was that? That's the $29.50 right here, minus the strike price. The strike price of this option was 25, and so it's the maximum of that or 0, And of course, it's better to exercise this one, and its value is $4.50. So we have the payoff. That occurs where? That occurs right here at expiration. All right, so that's step number one. Step number two is then, okay, if I want to know my profit or loss, what do I need to do? I need to take into account how much I paid for this option. So the profit of a call option on a single share would be what? Profit is payoff. We just calculated the payoff minus the price that I paid. Think back here, this is like time 0. And how much did I pay for this option? Let's look at the premium. The premium was $3. That came from right here. So remember, premium is a name for a price. So I just take the payoff. I calculated that in the first step up above, subtract off the price that I paid, $3, and that is $1.50. So turns out per share, I would make $1.50 from this call option. So there's my profit. Now I have one final thing to do, and that is to bring this multiplier back into play, that $100. And the multiplier is what? The multiplier means my option was not for a single share, it was for 100 shares. So now I'm going to bring that back into play. Now we can multiply both the payoff and the profit. Maybe this problem asked for both. Okay, so I'm going to multiply both the payoff and the profit, which were for a single share. I'm going to multiply those by the multiplier, which is 100. So now I bring this in at the end. So the payoff per contract is what? I had $4.50. I just multiply that by 100. That multiplier, I get $450. Very simple, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing for the profit. The profit was what? $1.50. Again, that was for one share. This option is for 100 shares. I'm going to multiply by 100. I get 150. And there's the answer. So I think this is a good way to approach these problems in 3 steps. Number 1, calculate the payoff. We know how to do that. We have the formulas for the payoff. Number 2, subtract off the price. And then number 3, if there's a multiplier, bring in the multiplier. Okay, let's try another problem here. You should probably pause and try this on your own. I'm going to reveal the answer right after I read this. You purchase one IBM July 120 put contract. Okay, this is a shorthand notation. I'll try to avoid using this in any exams, but this is a shorthand notation. So IBM, what is that? That's the underlying stock that the option is on. July is referring to the expiration month. And if they don't give you an exact expiration date, it's usually the 3rd Friday of that month. So here they just tell us July. And then what is the 120? The 120 is the strike price. Okay, so think of this as telling me the expiration date. The 120 is the strike price. And then it's a put. A put is option to sell. So that's sort of a shorthand terminology. IBM July 120 put gives me all the essential information. Okay, this is selling for a premium of $3. And again, we remember premium is another name for the price. You hold the option until the expiration date when IBM stock sells for $123 per share. You will realize a blank on the investment. Use a multiplier of 100. You might want to pause, take a minute, see if you can calculate this. I'm going to reveal the answer. All right, so the answer is B. This is a $300 loss. Let's see how to work through this. I'm going to use my steps. So step number 1, calculate the payoff of the put option per share. Per share. So the payoff is what? This is a put. So that was our P sub T. And it is the maximum of X minus S sub T. What is S sub T here? That is the stock price at expiration. So X was 120. 120 minus 123. That would be minus 3. I don't want to lose $3. So instead, my max is going to apply to the 0. And I'm going to get a payoff of 0. Okay, so this option actually ended up out of the money. So there's my payoff. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'm going to bring the price into play. So the profit per share is what? Payoff minus price. Very simple. Okay, so my payoff was what? My payoff was 0. The price is right up here. That's $3 per share. So I'm losing $3 per share. That was step number 2. And I'm almost there. And now step number 3 is bring the multiplier into play. Okay. Since each contract is for 100 shares, my total loss is going to be that minus $3, and then I need to multiply that by 100 shares because it's on 100 shares, not one share. and that's minus 300. So that's a $300 loss. Okay, so make sure you can do these basic calculations. That's how we do profit or loss. In the next section, I'm going to introduce you to payoff and profit diagrams. What these are these are diagrams that go along with the payoff and profit calculations that we were just doing. We're going to look at two of these, and these are quite common for people to understand positions in options. And the two that we're going to look at is first the payoff diagram. The payoff diagram is simply a plot of the payoff value of an option at expiration as a function of the underlying stock price. And then we'll look at the profit diagram. The profit diagram is just a plot of the overall profit or loss on a trade involving options as a function of the underlying stock price. Before I show you these for options, first I'm going to show you what they would look like just if I bought a share of stock. And we can do equivalent diagrams for both the payoff and the profit or loss if you just buy a share of stock. So let's look at that first. All right, so assume you have a long position of one share in a stock, and assume that the initial price of that stock was $20. What is that? That means I bought a stock for $20. And now here I'm going to hold it a certain amount of time, and until time what? Capital T. Capital T, that might be a month. Let's say I'm going to hold the stock for a month, and then I'm going to sell it in a month. And I want to know, what my possible profit and loss situation looks like there. Well, the first thing I would do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to sell this in a month. We're going to call that time capital T, right? That's just some set amount of time in the future. And I don't know what the stock price will be worth at time capital T. So I'm going to put down some possible values for that. So maybe it's only worth $10, maybe it's worth 20, 30, or 40. Okay, so essentially think of these as possible scenarios for the stock. All right, now this is going to be my x-axis on the plot that I make. I'm going to take those possible scenarios for where the stock could be. All right, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to calculate what the payoff of this position is. So what do we mean by the payoff? Now, for an option, it's pretty clear. We have our payoff formulas. For a stock, what it would be just the value that I could sell it for at time T. So for a stock, that's pretty trivial. Its payoff, or its value at time T, is just the price of the stock. So I just copy all of these exactly down because that is the value of the stock that I hold. Okay, and then I can plot this. Again, this is my X, and then when I plot the payoff as the Y here, this is what I call the payoff diagram. For a stock, it's kind of trivial, right? If the stock price ends up at $10, how much is my share of stock worth? Well, also $10, right? If the stock ends up at $30, what is the payoff or the value of my share of stock? That's $30. So the payoff for just a share of stock is kind of trivial. It's just the stock value at that time T. I'm calling it here expiration T. There's no expiration when you hold a stock. But I want to give you an analogy with an option. So here it's just a straight line going up, and that is our notion of what we would call the payoff function. All right, once I have the payoff function, then I would go and I would want to calculate what? My profit or loss. And how do I do that? I take the payoff, that's just the value at time capital T, that's how much I could sell the stock for, and I just need to subtract off the price that I paid. So if I do that, I'm going to fill out this diagram here. If the stock ends up at $10, I bought it for how much? I bought it for $20. 10 minus 20, I lost $10 on the trade. So that would be my loss in that situation. If the stock ends up at $20, I bought it for 20. So 20 minus 20, that's 0. That's my break even. If the stock ends up at $30, I bought it for 20. 30 minus 20, I made $10. So essentially all I do here to calculate my profit or loss is I take the payoff value, that is its value at time capital T, what I could sell it for there, and I just subtract off the price. And now I can plot that. What do you think that plot looks like? It looks like this. It looks like the dotted blue line right here. And this one just makes sense. Hopefully this corresponds to your intuition. Because I purchased the stock at $20 per share, if the stock goes down to $10, at time capital T when I sell it, then what happens? I lost $10. If the stock ends up at 30, then what? I made $10, okay? So we just get a straight line like that. All right, so these are the two plots that you would have just for a share of stock. I'll actually use this later in this set of slides. But for now, I'm just using it as an analogy for what we'll look at for options. So now let's move on to options and let's look at what these plots would look like for an option. All right, so let's start with a call option. And I want to calculate my payoff and my profit or loss on a call option. So here, let's assume the call option has strike price of 80. Let's remember a call option is the option to buy and strike price of 80. That's like having a coupon that allows me to buy a share of this stock for $80. We also have here that the call premium or the price is $14. So that's how much I pay for this option. And then here's the question, what would be the payoff and profit diagram in this case? Let's follow the same steps that we did for the stock. So the first thing that I do is I'm going to create this table. And I'm going to say, look, the value of my option at expiration depends on the stock price, whether the stock goes up or down. So I'm going to lay out these scenarios. Well, maybe the stock goes to 60 and at time capital T. That's the expiration of the option. Maybe the stock ends up at 70, 80, 90, or 100. And this is going to be my x-axis for my plot down here. So I put it there, and this is what the stock ends up at. Okay, and I have those same values. Then the first thing I would do here is I would calculate the payoff value of the call. Okay, and we remember what that is. That's this formula right here. It's the maximum of the stock price minus the strike price. Okay, and so I'm going to do that for each value of the stock price here. Let's do it for the first one. This is actually a good exercise to make sure that you can calculate the payoff of a call option. Let's think about it here. Remember, a call option is like a coupon. My coupon says I can buy for $80. If the stock ends up at $60, am I going to use my coupon? Am I going to use my call to pay $80 for it? No, of course not. So the payoff or the value of my call option is 0. It's worthless. I'm just going to throw it out. Okay. Same thing here. If the stock ends up at 70, my call is worthless. If the stock ends up at 80, this is the at the money case. Still, I didn't need it. Now it starts to gain some value. If the stock ends up at 90, I can buy it for 80. That's going to save me $10, so that's the payoff of my call. And if the stock ends up at 100, the value of my call or the payoff of my call will be $20. It's going to save me $20. Okay, so now I can plot this. So again, on the x-axis, I plot S sub t, and on the y here, I'm going to plot what? The payoff of the call. And if I do that down in my diagram, I've got these points, and I can draw a line through these points to give us the overall shape of the payoff function of a call. And it looks like this, okay? To me, this always looks like a ramp. The ramp starts at what? It starts at the strike price X, right there, okay? And essentially what this is this is simply a plot of this payoff function of a call, right, where the x-axis is representing the stock price, where the stock ends up, okay? To help me remember this, maybe this will help you remember it too, I think of a call, like I said, as a ramp. It's going up here at a slope of 1. The slope is equal to 1 because it's a call on one share. And I think of, driving car or something like that along here, and for a call option I'm driving left to right, and prior to the strike the value is 0. I didn't need the call, right? After the strike, then it's starting to save me money. Then I start zooming up this ramp, and it's having a payoff value. So that's the way I remember it. I always think in terms of these ramps, and a call is a ramp going to the right. Okay, so that's the payoff function. Maybe that'll help you as well. The payoff represents what? That is the value at what time, capital T, at expiration, when the call expires. It does not take into account the price that I paid for the call. So let's do that in our next row here. So now if I want to plot the profit, what do? I take the payoff and I subtract off the price that I paid. How much did I pay? I paid $14. So essentially all I do here is I take this row right up here, which is the payoff, and I take every value there and I subtract off the price that I paid. I subtract off $14, and I'm going to put that down here. Okay, so let's walk through just a couple of these. If the stock ends up at 60, I didn't need my call option. That means I wasted $14 buying it. So my overall profit or loss is what I lost $14. So that would be that case. And you can see it's going to be minus 14 up here. Let's go to another case. If the stock goes up to 100, then my call has value at expiration. It's going to save me $20. How much did I pay for it? I paid $14, 20 minus 14. So overall, I actually gained 6. Okay. So what does this look like? We know here that the payoff function looks like this ramp. The ramp starts at 0, right? Always starts at 0 and then starts going up. Essentially, to get from the payoff to the profit, all I do is I subtract off the price everywhere. Okay. So if I plot these points, for example, at 60, the profit is going to be minus 14. So that is at 60, I'm going to go down to minus 14. That would be that point there, right? At 70, it's also minus 14. 80, it's minus 14. At 90, it's minus 4. I'm down there. And at at 100, there's where I'm making $6. Okay. So I can draw that picture. And once again, it looks like this ramp. The only difference is what? It's been moved down by how much the price that I paid, that $14. And so that just drops my whole ramp down by 14 everywhere. And so the dotted diagram down at the bottom here, this is my profit diagram. And that's the one that in the end I care about, right? I care about my overall profit or loss, but it was built off the payoff diagram. Okay, so this one, when I look at it, what do I see? I say that, you know what, for me to overall be in profit territory on this overall trade, what do I need to happen to the stock price? I need the stock price to be up here, because then my blue dotted line is positive. That's my profit or loss. There's where I'm actually making money. And anything below that, this value will actually be 94. Anything below that, and look, I'm negative. I'm actually losing money. So this is a visual way to see, like before you enter a trade, before you buy this option, if you map this out, you can see, oh, okay, here's what I'm betting on. I want the stock to go up, and I want it to go up enough that I will have a positive profit. If it doesn't go up, what is the maximum that I can lose? $14. And what is that? That's just the price of the call option. And in general, whether you're buying a call option or a put option, the most that you can ever lose is just the value of the option, right? That's like buying a coupon. In worst case, you don't use the coupon, right? And so you just throw it out. And what did you lose? You lost the price that you paid for it. So it's the same here. All right. So this is the payoff in the profit loss diagram for a call option. Again, I think of that ramp going to the right, and the ramp starts going up where? At the strike price. All right. I'm going to very quickly introduce you to something we'll see in the next section, and that's if instead of buying a call option, you can actually sell a call option. That's sort of like the equivalent of shorting a stock, right? And here, what does that do to this diagram? That would take this diagram and it would flip it around. It flips everything. It mirrors it around the x-axis. Let me just quickly show you what that looks like. Okay, so the payoff in the profit or loss to the seller of a call option looks like what? The payoff diagram now before, if you had purchased the call option, you would have gone up a ramp. What happens here is you actually end up going down a ramp. So again, if you imagine, you're driving along here, if you have sold a call option, what happens when you hit the strike price, you start going down a ramp. Okay? And then the profit or loss, what is that? In this case, because you sold the option, you actually received the price. So that will actually raise this whole diagram up by $14 everywhere. And so your profit or loss actually stays here and then goes down. So that is what your overall profit or loss looks like if you are the seller of an option. Okay, and I'll use that in the next section briefly. But just remember that it looks like a ramp going down. I won't question you a lot on this, but I do want you to know the basic shape. A couple of things to note about this, okay? So one is just terminology. If you sell an option, okay, then that's referred to as writing an option or being short an option. Why is it called writing an option? An option is actually a contract. There are two sides to that contract. And so if you buy an option from somebody, that other side, the person who sold you the option, it's as if they pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down, okay, I'm giving you, the option to buy at this strike price before this date. It's like they wrote the option. So if you sell an option, it's like you pulled out the piece of paper, you wrote it, and you sold it to somebody. So that's called writing an option. Okay, so that's the first thing. And if you write an option, you are responsible for the payoff of that option. Okay, and so that's why the diagram gets flipped. The other thing here is note that if you write an option, look at your profit, or I should call this profit or loss. This loss is potentially unlimited. If the stock keeps going up and up and up, then you can lose an unlimited amount. So you need to watch out for that. That can be a little bit dangerous because you can potentially lose so much money by writing an option. On the other hand, we just said before that if you buy an option, your losses are limited, okay? You can never lose more than the price you paid for the option. On the other hand, if you sell an option, then you have unlimited losses. Okay, so I wanted to just briefly show you this and introduce that terminology. Let's jump to a put option. Let's see what the payoff and profit diagram looks like for a put option. So here, draw the payoff and profit for a put option with strike price 80, and let's assume the premium is $11. So here I've got strike price of also 80, and I'm going to do the same steps that I did before. So the first step is, okay, let's put down some values for where I think the stock could end up at expiration. Okay, so maybe it's 60, 70, 80, 90, or 100. I'm going to put those same values. Step number 2. Well, I'm going to calculate the payoff of my put at expiration depending on the value of the stock. And that is just our payoff function. Once again, this is good practice to make sure that you can calculate that payoff value, understand the exercise value or the payoff value of a put option. Remember, a put option allows you to sell for $80. Okay, so let's walk through a couple of these. If the stock price ends up at 60, and you can sell it for 80, you're getting how much more? You're getting $20 more than the price of the stock. So that's worth $20, right? If the stock price ends up at 70 and you can sell for 80, that's a benefit of $10. If the stock price ends up at 80 or above, then you're not going to use your option, right? You're not going to sell for less than it's worth. So those, it's 0, okay? So there is our payoff values for this put option. So that would be step number 1. And then step number 2 would be to calculate the profit or loss. And the profit or loss is just the payoff minus the price that you paid. What is the price that we paid? That's $11. So I'm going to take all the payoff values and I'm just going to subtract off $11. And then down here, here's my profit or loss. So if the stock goes down to 60, my profit is $9. If the stock, for example, goes up to 90, then I'm going to lose $11. Okay, so I calculate that. And then I just plot these again. So the stock price is always my X. And then I can plot either of these on the Y, either the payoff for the payoff diagram or the profit or loss. See if you can imagine in your mind what these are going to look like. I'm going to show you the plot right down here. So when I look at a put option, again, I have the stock price here. 80 was our strike. And what this one always looks like to me is a ramp going the other way. So this one, you're driving your car here, you're driving it right to left, and if you are above the strike price, that is, if the stock price ends up above the strike price, then it doesn't bring you any value, right? You didn't need it. On the other hand, the moment you hit the strike price here going this way, now it starts giving you value. Now you start going up the ramp, okay? And so that's what it looks like. So the payoff diagram, again, starts at 0 here. And then when it hits the strike going right to left, then it begins to go up. It goes up at a slope of 1 if it's on 1 share. So that's why it ends up at 80 here, right? So that's the payoff. And then to get from the payoff to the profit or loss, all you need to do is just subtract off the price. In this case, the price was $11. So I take this whole diagram here and I lower it by how much the price of the put. That's what this is showing you right here. I lower it by how much? $11. And so I just move it down by $11 everywhere. And that gives me the profit or loss diagram. And that's the one that I tend to care about at the end of the day, is whether overall I make money or lose money. Okay? And in this one I can see that there's some point here. This one is going to be, let's see, probably $69 right there. That if the stock ends up below that, then I'm in profit territory, I'm making money. And if the stock ends up above that, then I'm actually losing money. Okay? So again, this is a nice visual way to see when do I make money, when do I lose money on my option position. Other thing to note here is, I mentioned this before, what is the maximum that I can lose if I purchase a put option? It is that option premium. It's the $11 you can see here, that I can never lose more than that $11. Okay, so my losses are limited. All right, let's do a little practice and make sure you can draw these and identify these diagrams. All right, draw the payoff and profit diagram for a put option. So we're talking about a put option with strike 20 and premium $4. And now I've already begun to draw the diagram for you here. I've got the stock prices, and I've done some different prices here. 10, 20, 30, or 40. So that's what the stock might end up at expiration. 20 here, what was that? That was the strike price. That's why I put a line through it. And now see if you can draw first the payoff diagram. That is just what is the value of this put option at expiration. Okay, see if you can do that. And then see if you can calculate the profit or loss diagram. I'm going to reveal the answer here. Let's first look at the payoff diagram. The payoff looks like that. Again, I always think of that, you know, I'm driving along, right, and I hit the strike, and now I begin to get value. Or put, I'm going right to left, so it looks like that ramp, right? And the ramp starts going up at the strike price. And that's my payoff. And then to get to the profit or loss, what do? I simply subtract off the price or the premium that I paid. What does that do? That lowers it by how much? By $4 everywhere. So I just drop the whole diagram by $4. And there in the dotted line, I can see my overall profit or loss if I purchase a put option. Okay, good. Here's another question related to that. This brings us back to the moneyness. Let's see on this diagram if you can identify when the option would be in the money, at the money, or out of the money. So go ahead and look at that. I'm going to reveal the answer here. Okay, so the answer, the option would be in the money if what? Remember, 20 is the strike. As long as the stock price ends up below the strike, this option will be in the money. In the money. Okay, so let's remember, why is that? In the money was what? When I exercise it, it has exercise value, or its payoff has positive value. So that would be anywhere below 20, because I'm looking at the payoff diagram. One thing that students often confuse is on moneyness, they look at their profit or loss and they say, no, well, it's only this part here because that's where I have a positive profit. That is actually not what moneyness refers to. Moneyness only refers to what? The payoff function. So anywhere the payoff function is positive, that option is considered in the money. So in this case, for a put option, As long as the stock price is below the strike, then that is in the money. If the stock price is equal to the strike price, that is our at the money case. That is the break even. And then if the stock price ends up above the strike price anywhere here, that is the out of the money case. Okay? So nice to be able to identify these on the diagram. Okay, and this was for a put option. You could try to do the same thing for a call option as well. Let's do one more diagram here. Draw the payoff and profit diagram for a call option with strike price 30. I'm going to identify that right now. There's the strike price. And premium $8. Again, try this on your own. I'm going to reveal the answer here. So first, I want to do the payoff diagram. What does that look like? Payoff diagram, I always remember for a call, it looks like a ramp, but now going left to right. So again, I'm zooming along here. I hit the strike price. Boom. I jump up. I begin to go up that ramp. That's where it begins to have value. So that is the payoff. That is what happens at expiration, whether it has value at expiration or not. And then to get my overall profit or loss, what do I need to do? I need to subtract off the price. So in this case, I'm going to subtract off $8. That's the $8 right there. I just drop it by $8 everywhere. And the dotted line, that is my profit loss diagram. And so I can visualize that and I can see, I want the stock to end up here for me to be in positive profit. Or if the stock goes down, what is the maximum I lose? Just the option premium, or $8. Okay, that is a brief introduction to payoff and profit diagrams.